And now, a message from Loud Headquarters.
What's up, everyone? My name is Jesse Horton. I'm an engineer by education, an energy management expert through training, and a cannabis cultivator by profession. Thanks for taking some time to check in with me at South by Southwest to discuss my favorite topic, cannabis. But more specifically, about the extremely important process of building the legal cannabis industry in a way that maximizes both economic growth and positive change in our communities, especially those most harmed due to disproportionate cannabis prohibition enforcement. I own and operate an indoor cannabis cultivation facility where we specialize in hunting elite, unique genetics and growing premium top-shelf flowers. Loud, spelled L-O-W-D, in Portland, Oregon, is a dope team of award-winning growers and creatives joined together to represent an important sector of connoisseur cannabis culture. Our customers appreciate our commitment to quality, environmentalism, and industry ethics. I'm also lucky enough to work closely from a nonprofit perspective with the most important topics affecting sustainable growth in the cannabis industry. The Oregon Cannabis Association, where I sit on the board of directors with some of the most esteemed industry professionals in the state, is a nonprofit trade association focused on small business growth in the legal cannabis market. I co-founded the Minority Cannabis Business Association, a national organization focused on economic empowerment, social justice, and patient awareness. Some of the most influential names in the cannabis industry have helped to steer this organization to guide effective policies, either on the board of directors or in partnerships throughout the country. As well, I co-founded the New Leaf Project in Portland, Oregon with my wife and industry executive, Jeanette. The New Leaf Project is leading the push for Oregon's first cannabis equity bill. Additionally, alongside the city and the partner businesses who want to see a more diverse industry, New Leaf Project plans to cross the $1 million mark this year in grants and 0% interest loans given to cannabis businesses owned by those communities most affected by cannabis prohibition: Black, Latinx, and our Native American brothers and sisters. The Resource Innovation Institute, another nationally leading nonprofit where I sit on the board, is driving the future of resource-efficient cannabis production and controlled environment agriculture by establishing industry standards, facilitating best practices, and advocating for effective policies and utility incentives. I chose these efforts with serious intention because I've come to love this industry, and I believe that equitable small business growth and environmentalism is the key to unlocking a better industry. For business to reach its full potential, it must maximize profits and positive impact to our society. A massive global market is being developed as we speak, and we can steer it to change the lives for the better, help regenerate our earth, and serve as a beacon for responsible industry operations. In addition, provide a much-needed boost to our economy by growing robust small business ownership, creating hundreds of thousands of living wage jobs, and expanding our middle class. Or we could create just another industry where the rich get richer, where the average American has continually diminishing chances of competing against the corporate elite, where the health of our environment and our communities take a backseat to the health of a balance sheet, where people of color, especially my Black community, are exploited for talent and culture in an industry with no ability to gain meaningful ownership. Let's be real. Our Black brothers and sisters made cannabis culturally acceptable in many ways, but we've borne the brunt of cannabis prohibition enforcement in America. Across the country, at a rate of almost 10-to-1 in some places, and nearly 4-to-1 as a nation, Black and brown people have been arrested for cannabis crimes disproportionately compared to our white counterparts. In my city of Portland, Oregon, Black Americans and natives, one of the smallest percentages in population, are the only ones to be arrested disproportionately higher by record. Not only that, conviction rates are higher, sentences are more strict, and these things have led significantly to the mass incarceration epidemic in our country. I know directly the ill effects of a cannabis arrest on someone. My father spent 7 years in prison for cannabis. After release, one of the smartest college-educated men I know could only find work as a janitor to support our family. He grinded for 35 years with the same company to retire as a vice president. I was also arrested 3 times for minor cannabis possession. At the time, I lost my scholarship, I had to drop out of school, I lost a dream job at the top engineering firm in the country, and I suffered from depression due to the idea that this record had ruined so many opportunities in my life. Honestly, I thought my life was ruined as a whole. With a lot of luck, perseverance, and help from so many people, I was able to pull myself out of that cycle and land another position at a top German firm. After spending some time in Munich and coming back to the US, I was lucky enough to find myself in the middle of the medical cannabis revolution sweeping the West Coast. I remember damn near skipping to the medical facility to get my medical card because of an old back injury I sustained years ago. Well, I actually limped in, trying to sell it as much as possible in hopes to get my ticket to cannabis, my ticket to freedom in so many ways. I limped in, but I ran out to the dispensary to grab my first plant, some soil, pots, and I was hooked. I was a grower. Encapsulated with the art of cannabis cultivation and the ability to apply my engineering process learnings to the grow room, I soon quit my job to join the industry full time. And now I'm here. I'm working to get my piece of the American dream, a dream I never thought was possible for me. And I'm making ways for others to do the same. So many passionate business owners and career professionals share my dream story. I know that if guided in the right direction, our country has a chance to do something really special. If we don't build this thing in the right way, we will all regret this missed opportunity to create not just another industry, but a better industry. And not that you need me to tell you, I'll just reiterate, the opportunity is massive. There is simply big money in the legal cannabis industry. And it's not slowing down anytime soon. In just a short amount of time, the cannabis industry is estimated to be nearly $18.5 billion in the US market. And that's just 35 states. To put that in perspective, that's about half the size of the US chicken market and twice the size of the NFL. The difference is, chicken wings and football aren't illegal. Upon legalization, assuming the illicit or illegal market were to fully convert to the regulated market, the estimates for the United States will be $75 billion. Full conversion of the illicit market has a lot to do with the industry developing sensibly in regard to representation, taxation, and quality. Many people are more comfortable buying cannabis from their friend at lower prices and often, depending on the market, much better bud. Governments have brought in a total of $6.7 billion in tax money over the last 6 years, mostly used to supplement police budgets and mismanaged general funds. Small businesses have seen massive growth as well, with over 30,000 licensed businesses, the majority being between 10 and 15 employees. These are true small businesses, not including the tens of thousands of ancillary businesses such as security, construction, marketing, consulting, which are supporting the flow of goods. Job seekers have found one of the only industries experiencing growth throughout these troubled economic times. With massive layoffs from our troubling year in 2020, displaced workers had optimism considering the cannabis industry created 33,000 jobs in 2019. To bring the total to the US to an estimated 331,000 people employed by the US cannabis industry. That's approaching the amount of employees of the entire utilities industry. This makes cannabis the fastest growing job sector in the country. Often, positions are well above minimum wage, employing workers considered non-educated, earning average pay of over $18 per hour, with senior employee salaries averaging well above $100,000 a year. What's beautiful is this is a market whether in business ownership or career growth, every single American who has a connection to cannabis should have a chance to win. This is a craft industry where passion plus developed skill really does provide a great advantage. What's beautiful is this is a market where we're growing a plant for wellness. Caring for the earth is ingrained in the fibers of this industry. If environmentalism has a chance to be a corner principle of any industry, this is the one. What's beautiful is cannabis is a product where the diversity of those who enjoy and identify with it is more broad-reaching than most products in our country. Ensuring we build this industry in a way that is accessible to all is absolutely the moral thing to do, and also it's in good business sense. They both align. These are the principles of what the true American dream was supposed to be about. Small business growth fueling a thriving middle class. Environmentalism as a cornerstone, taking care of our earth for the sustainability of our communities. Diversity at the core, ensuring that every single American, no matter his race, his culture, background, class, has a fair shot to let skill and hard work take them to the top. And if that's not the true American dream that so many of us have felt denied, then I claim it as the new American dream, where we realize that not sacrificing ethics is the real way to improve the bottom line and the best way to position our economy for the future. Listen, I don't want to paint this rosy picture without telling you about all the most important challenges that we have to figure out in order to make this better industry come to fruition. Currently, there are a lot of issues with how we're building the legal cannabis industry, and we've got to address it together. Yes, you too, or we've got no chance. For one, few of us normal Americans without unlimited capital and connections have been able to get into the legal cannabis industry. Many are frustrated because small business opportunities are limited, regional, and becoming increasingly impossible. Also, many are blocked from employment and licensure due to past cannabis arrests. How messed up is that? Let's be honest, it takes an extreme amount of hard work and luck to be an entrepreneur in any industry. But this one is on a whole different level because this industry is being regulated differently in almost every single jurisdiction across the country. States and cities are picking winners and losers. Getting a ticket to the game has more to do with your pockets and political influence than your knowledge, hard work, or even luck. For example, in Oregon, for the most part, you needed to have about $5,000 to $10,000 and a cannabis-approved address to obtain a license. I was able to gain an opportunity by being located in one of the very few states with lower barriers of entry. Most aren't as fortunate in their zip code, such as in Florida. You had to have a plant nursery running consecutively for 30 years, plus hundreds of thousands of dollars to even apply. No one I knew had a shot in that market. What about you? Not only that, in states with limited licenses, corruption has run rampant in the licensing process. It's not uncommon for licensing to be halted due to lawsuits and alleged wrongdoings at the city and state level in an effort to use influence to enrich those in power. States often award bonus points for diversity ownership when you're applying for a license. A friend once offered me an opportunity to serve as a consultant on his license for a meager business percentage and a small fee. Later, I found out that I was listed as the director of cultivation without my knowledge in a brazen attempt to score more points and cut me out, even in the states where one qualifies and can afford a fee for a license. The costs to opening your business are often astronomical, not just because business is expensive, but because of the unreasonable, money-hungry, or fear-based rules and regulations that govern this business. For example, often, city business departments are requiring businesses to do illogical upgrades to get a business permit. These are codes that were never meant to be applied to the cannabis industry. For one small facility, I've spent over $100,000 on things like sampling vaults, typically meant for hazardous waste facilities, and energy-efficient equipment that, due to the nature of controlled environments, actually require the use of more energy to operate. Due to the fear of cannabis being leaked illegally, I'll say that one more time. Due to the fear of a plant being leaked illegally, some states have required licensees to be vertically integrated, requiring them to raise millions of dollars to run retail, processing, and cultivation licenses under one company, further reducing the amount of small business hopefuls. Taxes and overregulation in general hurt business owners and the consumers. 280E is a federal tax code that cripples most cannabis businesses because they cannot take business deductions for the cost of running their operation. Imagine as a small business paying a 90% tax rate. State and city taxation has run rampant as well. Often, this raises the cost to consumers by 20 to even 40% in sales tax. This pushes consumers to the unregulated market to pay lower prices for untested products that may not even be safe. Compliance costs are another sore spot, especially for small business owners. My cannabis facilities are required to have more camera backup storage than that of federally insured banks. The industry needs all hands on deck in order to unlock the true economic potential. Small business growth is a key component to innovation, and as things are shaping up, large, multi-state operators have a big advantage in being able to afford these inflated costs of business. Before we know it, the only companies still alive in this industry will be companies like Altria, the company owned by big tobacco giant Philip Morris. Another big issue is that environmentalism is taking a back seat at the time when it should be at the center of each and every industry. The climate change epidemic is a huge disruption to our livelihood and commerce. Massive cannabis facilities are coming online every day, with the current estimated kilowatt usage equal to the size of the electric car industry right now. But it's expected to be equal to the size of data centers by 2027. That's a lot of energy usage. This is an industry that comes from highly lucrative, illegal stealth operations, and energy efficiency is actually just becoming a thing. Often, these facilities have no relevant energy regulations to follow, outdated equipment, and little data for a baseline of improvement, as well as no best practices as a guide to help them through. The fast growth of our market is contributing not only to CO2 increases, but also to potentially catastrophic problems in our country of grid instability. Partly due to aging infrastructure and increased demand, the reliability of our electrical distribution system is in trouble, contributing to rolling blackouts and brownouts that have plagued the country, all too recently with the most recent ice storms. Second, enormous amounts of waste are being generated without efficient ways to handle it. Plastics from the requirement to tag each and every plant that comes through our system are amounting to tons of waste. Little regulations about composting and recycling other waste throughout the supply chain is preventing us from starting effectively. It's going to be much harder to reverse course once things get moving than it is to start right now. Rogue grows polluting the environment used to be the biggest problem, and they're now being addressed. But we're creating new pollution problems out of overregulation. Lastly, we are not using legal hemp in the most beneficial ways. Everyone is talking about CBD, and that's the focus. And so many people are planting CBD strains all across the country. But these are different varietals than hemp fiber strains. Hemp fiber can provide sustainable textiles and building equipment, easing the use of environmentally harmful practices like forestry. Hemp fields have been proven to absorb more CO2 per hectare than any forest or commercial crop, and is considered the ideal carbon sink by many scientists. But complexities and regulations, a shared issue with the high THC cannabis industry, are still hindering the growth of the hemp market. The cannabis industry has felt the turmoil of harsh environmental conditions firsthand. As a result of wildfires and of torrential weather in the most recent years, the devastating effects on crops, outdoor and indoor, families attached to these small businesses, and the consumers and patients who depend on our industry for wellness has been immense. The cannabis industry cannot follow the lead of other industries, especially on how we treat the environment. I'll say it again. We are growing a plant. We have got to be better in this area to maximize the growth and the potential impact that this industry can have on society. The third and final key issue that I have to discuss is the lack of diversity. It is, without a doubt, preventing us from reaching our potential as an industry. Ownership in the regulated cannabis industry by communities of color is drastically low. Based on industry studies, licensed Black ownership is between 1% and 3%, lower than other industries, likely due to the cost of ownership, strict regulations, and general skepticism of the opportunity as it relates to the history of cannabis prohibition enforcement and the current corruption in licensing. Minority ownership as a whole is better, but still far below averages in other industries. Outside of ownership, the makeup of the legal cannabis industry is just not diverse in general. The industry is not nearly a reflection of the diversity of its consumers. Many of the top and most influential companies are struggling with the inclusion of Black and brown communities, and as a result, the enthusiasm for the regulated market is not as strong as it could be or should be. Diversity issues stretch to regulators, politicians, and those deciding the fate of the legal cannabis industry. Rarely are they representative of the communities most affected by cannabis prohibition enforcement. The communities that we seem to be leaving behind and forgetting as the cannabis industry gets big. Add in the fact that the makeup of lawmakers and enforcers doesn't reflect the community, because somehow, even after cannabis legalization, disparities in arrests have actually increased in many places like Washington, Colorado, and even Oregon. What we must not forget, there is and always will be an option for diverse consumers and all consumers who don't see what they want or need in the regulated cannabis market. And that's the traditional, unregulated, illicit market. The illicit market in California is expected to be nearly 2 to 3 times the size of the regulated cannabis industry. And it's by far the biggest hurdle and threat to industry growth. There is no erasing the history of targeted cannabis prohibition enforcement in this industry. But we still have the opportunity to use cannabis legalization to recognize and reconcile the generational harms done to communities. Doing so is not just in the best interest of those communities, but also in the best interest of the growth and legitimacy of the legal cannabis industry going forward. Okay, that's a lot of problems, but there is a simple solution, and that's to build this industry in a way that is in line with the true American dream, or the new American dream, whatever you want to call it. This doesn't have to be complicated, but it must be concerted. By doing so, we will unlock the true potential of this industry, both as an economic engine fueled by diverse small business growth, innovation, and growth of the middle class, as well as a means for positive change. We must have sensible regulations to promote small business growth and environmentalism. I mentioned some earlier, and here are a few more. Don't overregulate businesses out of fear of criminality. Higher barriers of entry and unnecessary compliance burdens do not promote industry growth. It promotes the illegal market. Develop environmental standards and reporting for the industry and make this data available to propel industry efficiency. Business owners want to improve in relation to the environment. It's ingrained in cannabis culture, but we need support through data-based education, innovative solutions, and utility incentives. Support diverse businesses to accelerate entry and success in the cannabis industry. Equity programs are important to building a diverse cannabis industry, mainly because of the many artificial barriers we've discussed that severely hinder inclusion. Build and fund accelerators, grant and loan programs to support POC cannabis business owners. Businesses tend to hire within their own communities, and they tend to support their community needs. There are some programs out there, but we need more. By far, the single biggest thing that everyone can do is to utilize consumer awareness and influence to channel your buying power. Utilize your individual influence to support dispensaries and brands who are representing the industry that you want to see. Ask about product suppliers. Ask about energy and water practices. Ask about employment standards so that they know that you care. Trust me, it matters. Recently, in Massachusetts, an industry association sued the state to remove equity provisions that supported more Black and brown delivery business ownership. CanOcclusive, a national organization, rallied a number of local consumers into a boycott of the cannabis businesses that made up that association. These are some of the largest cannabis businesses in the country. That boycott effectively got that lawsuit dropped quickly. The cannabis industry was born from activism, and we can't forget about that power. Listen, I say this with true sincerity. The sensible creation of the legal cannabis industry is our chance to manifest the full power and benefits of industry as a whole in our country. An industry that fuels a challenged economy with robust small business growth and fair wages. An industry that positively affects climate change through innovation, sensible regulations, and proper implementation of hemp. An industry that prioritizes diverse and meaningful community inclusion and uplift in a way that recognizes and reconciles historical harms. In your own states, new cannabis laws and regulations are being decided literally every session. Last year, the MORE Act was passed in the House of Representatives, the first cannabis legalization bill to pass U.S. Congress, led by our dear Oregonian congressman and cannabis champion, Representative Earl Blumenauer. Senator Chuck Schumer, Senate Majority Leader, has a bill in Senate that could further that agenda. How these regulations play out will shape the direction of the global cannabis industry and the chances for so many to live out their American dream. If you care about the next great American industry being a beacon for a new era or another example of how industry is not working for the average American, then you must get involved. Without sensible regulations, meaningful equity legislation, and active involvement from all sectors and stakeholders, we will miss a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Let's be clear. Building a better industry is not about guilt or charity. It's about the sustainability of our industry, pure and simple. Care of all communities plus the care of the earth equals the strength of our economy and opportunity for all to live the true American dream.
This has been a message from the Loud headquarters in Portland, Oregon.